107.7 The Pulse, News Talk 98.1 WTSN. Cail and Company for Thursday afternoon. And joining us this afternoon, as he has the previous two Thursdays, is our good friend, Dr. Barry Taylor. Dr. Barry, how are you today?
I'm well. Ken, how are you?
I am doing very, very well. I am doing well. We're sharing a part of our broadcast these days with my Facebook followers, or those who would like to follow me on Facebook. It's on my Facebook page at Ken Cail, C-A-I-L. And I'm holding up right now, to those tuned in, I'm holding up a copy of your book so they can see it.
Great.
Right there.
I just finished a Facebook Live a half hour ago, and I must be friends with you on your Facebook page so I can send you little inspired quotes or little things.
That would be terrific. I would enjoy that very much. And the book is Love Your Body, Your Path to Transformation, Health and Healing. Dr. Barry Taylor, the author. And our topic today is going to be stress without distress. Correct?
That's it. That's it. Is it possible? You know, did you ever have a thought, I had it for many, many years, that life would really be successful? I would have won at the game of life if I didn't have stress. Did you ever have that thought?
Sure. Oh, I think I don't think you'd be human if you did not.
Well, okay, so that's a tough one to follow because that means I'm going to have the next 45 minutes to turn people around to be a little less human. So I don't remember whether it was a pill I took, a vitamin I took.
No, I'm not saying they shouldn't aspire to that, but I mean, I think everybody has felt stress in their lives without question. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's the negative pejorative, like you had the thought I had, that I really would be way more successful in my life if I just had less stress. And I somewhere in a workshop or a pill or some beautiful sunrise or sunset, I had this aha that for those of us in life that have a very high value of learning or growing, for those of us in life who have a very high value of service or contribution, that there's something about life always challenging us. It's kind of inherent to, if you want to be a better person today and tomorrow than you were yesterday, there are always going to be different demands to navigate through. And I somewhere sometime began to define stress is different than distress. Like if I was laying in a hammock all day long, I'd probably have stress lines on my butt. And rather than life would be really great if I didn't have stress, what if I welcomed with open arms stress? And stress is what I always will come up against to do the learning that I've got to do. And what I'm really railing against, what I'm really wanting to mitigate, the new word that's coming across the news these days, neutralize, is the distress. And so I define for people that the gap between stress and distress is the gap between demands and resources. And that what most of us in life, most normal people, you refer to normal people, is we try to reduce the demands. We move, we get new relationships, we get new jobs, we change externals. And I'm not saying that we should never get new relationships or change new jobs. I'm not saying that moving is always bad. But what we're always attempting to do, most normal people, is to change the part of the equation that I call demands, which is very different than how do you increase resources. Because those demands sometimes we have very little control over, very little. But we have way more control over things that we can do physically. You and I, for the next few minutes, could talk about vitamins that could help with stress, or we could talk about mental ways of meditating or perceptions, how we think or how we deal with our feelings. So the gap between stress and distress is the gap between knowing that sometimes it's not about reducing demands. It is about increasing resources, and it's not about trying to get away from stress. For those of us that realize that that's how we learn, that's how we grow, that's how we become better human beings. That's how we become more immune to viruses, because we get stressed. You create antibodies in your body.
Right.
So you become more resistant to the stress. But if the context is, as it was for me for many, many years, that stress is bad to be avoided as much as possible, and whenever the demand comes, what I'm always trying to do is minimize the demand, I'm teaching and I'm offering, you and I can playfully have a conversation for the next little bit on, well, what about if we shifted the orientation? And what we're really trying to do is mitigate or neutralize distress. It's not that stress is bad. It's when the demands are outstripping our resources, and we forget that we either have the resources within ourselves, but we forgot how to access them, or it's a moment in our life to learn new ones. So that's the start of this show, stress versus distress. And could you welcome stress as a potential harbinger of being a better person, of being able to be more intimate, of being able to be more creative, of being able to be kinder, more compassionate? But to do that, you then have to do things with your mind, or you have to do things with your body. You have to eat better, take different nutrients. If you're eating the same way that you did, 3 months ago, and you think that's the way to deal with the immune system, and given how stressed out most people are, then I'd say they're missing the resource of how distressing it is to our physical body of the way most people are thinking, or the way most people would love to be stronger. What can I do besides washing my hands and possibly wearing gloves and a mask? What could I do with my body that would help the distress of everything that's out there, holding shopping carts and doorknobs going into buildings, and just what could I do to strengthen myself? That would be an example of, let's talk about how to increase our resources, because we can't see the germs out there, right? I mean, we can't.
It's an invisible enemy, that is for sure. Right,
or friend.
Yeah, depending on your point of view, but correct. Yeah. So there are many different things you can do. You talk about vitamins, meditation. I'm sure there's nobody listening to us today that hasn't experienced stress. I guess you can handle it in any number of different ways. It can act as a positive, as you pointed out. But what are the things we can do, in our own daily lives to avoid stress, or to mitigate stress as best we can?
Yeah. So thank you for the clarification, because it's taken me a while to get here. I do talk about it in the second half of my book a bunch. So first of all, I don't think orienting your life, my life, to avoid stress is the way through. I do think that people who do too much recreational drugs, or people who are doing too much alcohol, people who become meditation fanatics, people who become gym rats and exercise fanatics, I do think that one can do something that might be perceived as negative, like alcohol or substance abuse, or something that's positive, like meditation or exercise. Mm-hmm. That any of those things could be used to not deal. How can I avoid stress? So first of all, you asked the perfect question at the right moment. I don't think the orientation is to avoid stress, because I'm saying that stress can be the way we get woken up. Stress, the outside environment can offer us, like, there's something you need to learn. Now, I don't know if the coronavirus is related to that we've all been taking life for granted. I mean, this is a spin. It's an interpretation. There's no inherent fact. But you can either look at the coronavirus as a horrible harbinger, because it is so unsettling and so I mean, most everyone's life is being deconstructed in terms of their routine. And, it's just on so many levels. Or you might be able to create a spin that might be more than just sour grapes, and it might be more than just looking at the silver lining in anything and saying, well, is there something that this pause in our life could be teaching us which has to do with eating better or dealing with the environment better? Or, I took my own immune system for granted, or I took hugging people for granted, and I took thanking people for granted, and I took being kind. I took so many things in life for granted. Now that they're being taken away from me, and I'm dealing with, bouncing off the walls and boredom because I can't live a normal life. Is there a way that there's a blessing in disguise? Now, there's no fact in that way of looking at it, but it's also different than just speaking to somebody and saying, this is horrible, this is tragic. How many people I've been on the phone with the last number of days that the first thing out of their mouth is, how are you doing in this crazy time? See, I think language creates reality. And if your orientation is that this is a crazy time, it's going to be very difficult, I'm not saying impossible, to focus on what's the opportunity for us to learn here, as opposed to this is just terrible and tragic. So the first thing is to see that this is very unsettling. This is really getting to the core of a lot of us, and it's distressful. So then I could say, well, what could I do? So, because maybe watching, we talked about this, last week or the week before, maybe watching an hour or two in the morning of news, no matter what channel, no matter what your persuasion is of which channel you're watching, and a couple hours in the evening, maybe that kind of data is not going to leave me inspired. It's not going to activate within me the kinds of creativity, the kind of inventiveness for my body to be turned on in a way where my own immune capacity is really clicking in. Now, that's just a way of mentally, there were experiments, when you used to walk into, let's say a huge electronics store. I want to be careful of mentioning a name, but these huge electronics stores where they have like 50 or 100 different TVs on.
Sure, yeah.
You remember those? Yeah, and if you walked in years ago when there were wars on and every single TV was turned on to some kind of pictures of the news right in front of you, what was going on in another part of the world, people, their physiology was measured. That much input affected people's blood pressure. It affected people's physical biochemistry in different ways. Similar to last week or the week before, I talked about a study of people meditating on gratitude and inspiration and love for 10 minutes a day for 4 days, and an immunoglobulin called IgA was almost doubled after only 4 days of 10 minutes 3 times a day. So with something like the whole issue of stress without distress, it's not like people have got to meditate on a cushion for 30 minutes 3 times a day or 2 hours a day. But I'm offering people, from a mental point of view, there is a whole orientation rather than just saying this is horrible. I mean, we all can be honest in saying this is unsettling, this is hard. I have some insecurities. A friend of mine got sick. It's getting very close to home now. Somebody I know died, if that was true for somebody. But that's different than what are we really focusing on, because what we focus on becomes our reality. And rather than saying this is stressful, the shift in context I'm offering is stress is not bad to be avoided. It's a way that we grow as human beings. It's a way that we become more conscious. It's a way that we expand our awareness by having all these different environmental things from the outside that give us different opportunities to be more compassionate or more kind. Then there's the physical part of, we have this organ in the back of our back on top of our kidneys. Another name for kidney is renal. AD in Latin means above. And then you and I can talk about all sorts of things that if somebody wanted to make 2 or 3 choices in their life, if they wanted to make 10 choices in their life, the adrenals make cortisol. Another name for cortisol is adrenaline. So if somebody wanted to think less distress, if they wanted to have less tension and tightness and contraction in their body, then what might they do so their adrenals were like completely on? You know, adrenals aren't on like a cop almost pulls you over and now your heart's pounding as they walk up to the side of your car, am I going to get a ticket or not? But somebody's adrenals can be on a lot, like they're on alert. Like you and I could easily say that a lot of people, maybe most, unless they have amazing, masterful practices at stress management, most people are internally on alert these days. You know, that doesn't mean they've got heart palpitation, but their level of tension is what I mean, Ken. Their level of wondering, I mean, the uncertainty of how is this going to happen? I mean, what a world we're going to live in. Are we going to have 100,000 deaths or 200,000 deaths? Is there another choice? I mean, the uncertainty is so challenging to grok. So our body has to deal with that. Are we going out and walking more? Are we breathing any differently? Are we doing a sauna or steam? We can't go get massage because that's out of the question. Are we stretching more? You know, how do we deal with the physical entity of these muscles and your physical body? Or are we just drinking the same amount of alcohol, the same amount of coffee, the same amount of anything, and there's no awareness to God, the source, some wise being gave us an adrenal gland that's either going to keep pumping to the point where it can get really exhausted, and then you wonder why sleep is not enough, or we can take different vitamins. We can talk more about that after the break if you want, about what kinds of things would support the adrenals to do a better job so that the demands show up as stressful rather than distressful.
No, absolutely. And, you talk about avoiding caffeine. Nicotine is another thing probably that should be avoided, to reduce stress. Alcohol, you talk about recreational drugs as well. Right. And I think a lot of people, I think all gyms are closed right now, but I do see people out walking, trying to maintain some modicum of physical activity anyway. Yes. And I do believe, I think this is probably true of a lot of people these days, they're probably getting more sleep than they have in a long time. I think a lot of people are.
Because they're depressed or they're tired or they're tense. And it may not be, Ken, that people need to avoid coffee or alcohol.
Right.
And I don't smoke pot, and I'm not telling people should smoke pot or avoid it, or recreational drugs or whatever they use besides marijuana. But let's talk about alcohol since it's legal and coffee as it's legal. To legal drugs. I think the concern in the context that I'm offering today is not about avoiding it, because both of those could be coping strategies that unless somebody replaced their coffee or replaced their alcohol with something else, they're going to probably get angry at me. They're going to get irritated because I'm taking away something that's important. If they don't have their Joe in the morning, then how are they going to crank it up? And if they don't have their alcohol in the evening, their 1 or 2 glasses of wine or their 1 or 2 martinis, and I'm not alcoholic, I just have a couple of martinis. And if I say, well, they rob your body of a lot of B vitamins, it's like the question is dependency. The question is, are you at a smorgasbord in your life where if you drink the couple of martinis or a couple of glasses of wine, or you have a glass or two of cup or two of coffee in the morning, you're okay if you do, and you're okay if you don't. The issue is it a preference? Mm-hmm. And if you don't do it for 3, 4, 5, 10 days, you're absolutely fine. Or is it if you don't have your coffee in the morning, your energy is going to be down by your ankles, because that's actually you're caffeine dependent to crank it up in the morning, and you have to have that. that's when I then get in the issue of you need other tools, potentially what you eat or potentially a vitamin or two, so that it's not about, go off the coffee, it's bad, and I could give a couple of things where it's not the best thing. It's the lack of choice that you don't realize you've gotten yourself into. You're not an alcoholic, but you now are using alcohol to quieten, de-stress, relax yourself, where you forgot about a bubble bath. You forgot about Tai Chi. You forgot about stretching. You forgot about reading some phenomenal poetry. You forgot about holding your beloved hand and looking them in their eye and just sharing loving thoughts with one another. And you've told yourself over time, and our culture unfortunately supports this a lot, that you need the alcohol, as opposed to, in a universe of options, there aren't like 25 other things. And then if you want to have a couple of drinks 2, 3, 4 times a week, go. But there isn't a dependency, like if you don't have it, you're going to feel really uptight and you're not going to sleep. And by the way, there are a lot of people I know that are having a glass or 2 or 3 of wine at night, and it causes them to have poor sleep. Because one of the symptoms of too much alcohol, if you're using alcohol to really unwind, is that sometimes it'll change your brain, but it doesn't, for some people, then allow them to really sleep restfully.
Yeah, quite true. Quite true. I know that, and that. So you're not saying eliminate any of these things. Just don't be dependent on these things.
Be big enough to look in the mirror and ask yourself, what's my relationship with this? Am I okay if I do it? And am I okay if I don't?
Right.
And coffee is like a legal drug in our culture. I'm not saying it's bad and horrible and nobody should drink it. I'm talking about somebody's relationship to the coffee, and they wonder why they're tired late afternoon. The adrenal gland that I've mentioned, this gland in your back that is part of the endocrine system, part of pituitary, thyroid, adrenals for men, testes for women, ovaries, this feedback loop of hormones. So you got this little teeny, about the size of a pig, that does enormous things, makes adrenaline. And we live our life where even though there aren't lions and tigers in our driveway, we perceive things long before coronavirus, where we sometimes, the negative, as you and I know, you and I have done it in our life. It's not like only bad neurotic people do it. Sometimes small things appear bigger, like in a side view mirror, and sometimes people get very programmed where they have a lot of small things that appear big. So sometimes people, given their resources of they don't exercise enough, or they don't know how to eat to support the adrenals, or they don't swim or meditate or breathe, they don't know how to move their body, that the effects of what you and I are calling stress, that I'm calling distress, lives as tension in our body. So distressful symptoms could be hair thinning or falling out, or bright light bothers you, or if somebody's got a lot of allergies throughout the winter or seasonal allergies, those are different kinds of external stresses. Every organ in your body has a time period where it's most turned on and where it's like resting. So the adrenals, this organ in your back that makes adrenaline, takes a nap between 3 to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It is a common time when people get tired, at least thousands of people I've seen in the last 40, 50 years, when I'm taking a history, and I'm asking them certain things that I would wonder, do you bruise easily? Do you get infections a lot? Do you have allergies? Do your hair thin or fall out? Those kinds of things are not within most allopathic kind of drug-oriented surgical doctoring, but the kind of nutritional work that I do, they point me toward B vitamin deficiencies, or they point me towards, this person's gone through a tough divorce. This person's gone through bankruptcy. This person's gone through a real difficult time when their mom or dad passed. Or this person had their own illness that went on and on for a long time. Or now collectively as a culture, rather than us all looking up at the moon saying, wow, there's a person about to get off a rocket ship and step on a moon, collectively, how many people on the Earth, it's like 93% of the planet is being sheltered in place. some staggering number of us are having to deal with this understandably unsettling, uncertain, insecure, am I going to get sick? What can I do? There aren't going to be enough doctors, and if this person does get sick, or if I get sick, I might not even be able to go to the emergency room the way I would normally do. There are so many things about this conversation that are unsettling. And what I'm saying is those things build up way before coronavirus or now, so that the conversation of, well, what resources? Well, one resource could be eat more B vitamin-rich foods. I mean, the adrenals need, here's something easy to remember, Ken. The adrenals need vitamins A, B, and C. How easy is that to remember, right? So when you have adrenal deficiency symptoms, this isn't like a disease, like cortisol, like Addison's disease. This is the adrenal gets tired over years. It's people who miss breakfast a lot, people who eat tons of sugar, people who have way more alcohol than their body can really deal with. That people are living on, quote, fumes because they're used to having 2, 3, 4, 5 cups of coffee a day. Or there are some people who don't drink coffee. But you get the point I'm making is that the adrenals are used to drive people. So people manipulate themselves where they don't realize that's what they're doing, because there isn't enough substance, there isn't enough foundation for them to really operate from a place of strength. So coffee is a legal drug, and we get ourselves up, and then toward the end of the day, we bring ourselves down. And there are, I'm not saying never do coffee, I'm not saying never have wine to bring yourself down, I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. I'm saying that there are things that the adrenals you and I could know about to eat. The adrenals need vitamin A, B, and C.
Well, let's talk about those things. Let's talk about those things. We have to take a break. Dr. Taylor, Dr. Barry Taylor is with us, and he is the author of Love Your Body, Your Path to Transformation, Health, and Healing. And after the break, we'll talk about those A, B, and C foods and vitamins that we can utilize in our daily lives. But we'll take a break, and Cail and Company will continue with Dr. Barry Taylor right after these words on 107.7 The Pulse and News Talk 98.1 WTSN. 107.7 The Pulse, News Talk 98.1 WTSN, or you can see my portion. I say see my portion of Cail and Company on my Facebook page. Ken Cail, C-A-I-L, is the last name. The drawback is you don't hear the other part of the conversation, which is far more stimulating than my part of the conversation. You don't hear from J-Dog. You don't hear from Dr. Taylor. You don't hear the commercials. But you can follow along if you listen to 107.7 The Pulse, News Talk 98.1 WTSN, or on the web, 1077WTPL.com or 98.1 WTSN.com. But if you just watch my Facebook page, you're not going to get really the best part of this program. Dr. Barry Taylor is with us. We're talking about stress without distress, and we'll talk about the A, B, and C vitamins and foods that we can take to help the situation. But don't you think there are some people out there, Dr. Taylor, who thrive on stress or distress, depending on how you want to look at it?
Absolutely, yeah. If you take their problems away, they have a really big problem. Yeah, there are adrenaline junkies. I've had patients like that if you give them an option and you say things like, it's not that I don't want you to drink any coffee. It's not like I don't want you to, if you're a 6-gear car and your manual transmission, can you get a sense that your colitis, your asthma, your cancer, your migraines, your something is because you too often are living in 8th gear. And you've gotten to the point, I think, to what you've just said, where you're enjoying it, where you don't realize it's a little bit of an adrenaline high or in medical circles we would call it they're a bit of an adrenaline junkie.
Mm-hmm.
And to get calmer, somehow their perception, even if it's a misperception, is that if they get calmer, they're going to be more bored. If they really could meditate and relax and enter in some universe of, dare I say, peace, their naivete has them think, it's a misperception, that it would be very boring. So that would be my answer to yes. There are some people that if you tell them their allergies, their colitis, their food indulgences, that something is related to that they're in overdrive and have been since their divorce or since their or since their parents something, and that was a coping strategy to just make more money or to work like a maniac, or that was the way you were brought up in your particular household, that to be a good person, you had to demonstrate a certain level of success. C pluses, Bs, B minuses, B pluses were not enough. You'd get yelled at if you didn't get A's. I mean, people have all sorts of different scripts. So the answer is yes. There are some people, if you open a door and you say, look, this isn't like you've got to be mellow and quiet and, la-di-da, but it would be nice if you could have an option to be that more often than you are. That still seems like you're trying to teach them Arabic or Mandarin. I mean, it just seems overwhelmingly difficult.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And I think you talk about adrenaline junkies, and I think there are a lot of us that could fall into that category. I mean, you could also call it procrastinators, right? I mean, people. I mean, there are times I put myself in that category, and when putting off, making a call to somebody or writing something. If I, have a deadline to write something, you generally write it pretty close to the deadline, and that sort of thing. I think people sometimes thrive on that kind of stress, if you will.
Yes. And in my book, which you've been so great to talk about over different kinds of programs that you and I had the pleasure of having on your show, there's a chapter at the beginning of the second half of the book called Conditioned Patterns. And what I think you're pointing out is that we all, I mean, this is not about you get evolved and now I don't have any conditioned patterns, but a pattern of procrastinating, we'll just use the word you used, might have 7 or 20, it certainly doesn't have 3,000, but it might have 7 or 8 or 15 different, your reason for being procrastinating might have 2 or 3 things that come together in a perfect way for you, whereas somebody else who's, procrastinating, they have different things that drive their procrastination. But the point is, just like an adrenaline junkie, it's kind of like a computer program in your head. And, we all have different kinds of patterns, and a way of dealing with stress more effectively so it doesn't become distress is to lightheartedly, lovingly, humorously, curiously be open to how do you have your foot nailed to the floor, as opposed to, I don't want to hear about my procrastination because I feel so ashamed of my procrastination that if we talk about it, I'm just going to leave that conversation 15 minutes or an hour later feeling like a bag of spell it out. So the question is, how do we deal with the ways that we're not as aware, we're not as intentional as we might like to be in loving, curious, lighthearted ways? That's what I'm offering in that chapter of conditioned patterns that might release the noose. It might reduce the chokehold where we're completely unconscious. And I'm saying, given my young life, that if you can just be a bit more aware of the tendency to be procrastinating or the tendency to be an adrenaline junkie, And what I teach in this 21-day Love Your Body program that you and I have talked about is for people to be a better observer of the pattern. Now, that doesn't mean, oh, there I am being a procrastinator again. See, that's not being an observer. That's judging yourself and making yourself wrong. You heard it in the tone of voice, right? Oh, damn, there I am doing that again. That's not observing. That's judging. And if you can teach people, it's kind of the core of the New Age word. You've certainly heard it a lot. Maybe we'll do a whole show on mindfulness. It's coaching people to be mindful, and sometimes the thing they have to be mindful of is the judgment. And just watch yourself judge yourself for being so procrastinating. Just watch that. And then when you get to be a better observer, you might procrastinate less. That's one way in a Love Your Body program. Didn't think I was going to go here, but here we are. That in this 21-day coaching program that I do online, that people can experience stress as a demand, but it doesn't carry the same weight. It doesn't carry the same burden as when you and I feel overwhelmed by distress. That's my point. Because when you and I are, we use the word stress, but I say we really mean distress, then all we want to do is get rid of it, right? All we want to do is have less of it. Because there's no door to what's the opportunity here. What is it we can learn from it? It's like this bad part of ourselves we want to get rid of. Or in this case, this bad part of life called the coronavirus, you know. And I think there are other options. Could be why mindfulness as a way of learning is, you know, caught on fire. I've been teaching mindfulness in my Love Your Body program since 1981. You know, about 15,000 people have gone through that process. So we're back to conditions and patterns and adrenaline junkie. And I'll raise my hand and say, yeah, sometimes I really get off on moving fast.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes I really like it, you know. However, I also love going away and doing a silent meditation for 3, 4, 5 days, which some people look at me like, how can you ever be silent for 3, 4, 5 days? I say, well, you listen to your internal chatter, and then, you know, if you're just hanging out, you know, trust me, you know, it doesn't keep screaming for, you know, it eventually quietens. And then you notice there's something else in your head between your ears besides all this chatter. But it doesn't go away in a half hour.
Now, in the we only have about 3 minutes left, Dr. Taylor, unfortunately. Okay. But in that time, tell us how we can aid and abet our vitamin B, whether it be through vitamins or food. What can we do to help our vitamin B status?
Yeah, and let's broaden it, and I'll do it real quickly. So there are things that somebody can do when it looks like they've missed meals a lot, they've eaten sugar a lot, they've had too much alcohol, too much pot, they've been on wound healing or dealing with surgery, they've been anxious. Then we're talking about, wow, you have some kind of adrenal fatigue. So there's a chapter in the first half of my book on adrenal fatigue. And now we're talking about more vitamins A, B, and C foods. A foods would be foods that are chlorophyll rich, lots of green foods, lots of vegetables. B vitamin rich foods are foods like our whole grains, pumpkin seeds, almonds, almond butter, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds. Difficult to get vitamin C in the middle of winter, but the inside of a grapefruit or a sweet potato, there are different foods because orange juice, say, if it's pasteurized, vitamin C is very heat sensitive. So if you focus on, if listeners email me, I'll send them a PDF on foods that are high in A, B, and C. That's one thing I'd love to do for your listeners. 2, there are supplements that are really high-end multi-B vitamins. There's one I make in the Love Your Body line. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination the only brand that makes a really great B vitamin. I also make an herbal combination called Healthy Adrenal, which has got different herbs like ginseng in combination with something called pantothenic acid, which is B5. that people can take when they've got mild, moderate, or significant adrenal burnout. I give that to people with allergies, or people who've been dealing with pain or arthritis or migraines, or people who they're just stressed out. Then there are different ways that herbs can be used, and I'll be happy to send people a PDF with the same foods to help the adrenals. I'll send people, it'll also include some herbs that help the adrenals. So you're basically wanting to eat cleaner with more vegetables, more whole grains, more fresh fruit if you can. Hard to do that in the dead of winter. And then the foods that rob your body of vitamin A would be if you overcook your food and you're boiling all your vegetables and you're eating a lot of sugar or drinking a lot of alcohol. Those foods rob your body of B vitamins, even if you're taking a B vitamin. Might be a reason why you need to take a B vitamin supplement. But it doesn't mean you never have sugar. It doesn't mean you never have alcohol. It just means be aware that too much of that is going to neutralize the B vitamins that you're trying to get in a better B vitamin dense way of eating. Whole grains, nuts, seeds, not peanuts, but almond butter, cashew butter, tahini, things like that.
What is the best way that people can email you, Dr. Taylor?
Dr. Barry at Dr. Barry Taylor. DR, no space, no period, my first name Barry, at drbarrytaylor.com will be an email address. They can do it through my website or just email me at drbarry at drbarrytaylor.com. And if they just say, heard you on Ken Cail's show, isn't he the best? I will say, yes, Ken is the best.
Well, Dr. Taylor, you're too kind, but thanks again for spending an hour with us and giving us some positivity in sometimes a less than positive world these days. And thank you so much for doing that, and we appreciate all you do.
You're great for the spin. Thank you so much. God bless you. And J-Dog, thank you for your help. And let's just stay inspired, stay focused. We all are teaching and learning a lot in this challenging time. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, Dr. Taylor. We appreciate it. Take care.
Well.
Talk
Bye.
to you soon. Bye-bye.